I never thought a Saturday night would change everything. But that was the night Lauren came back from her cousin's wedding, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. We had been married for 10 years, and though the spark had dulled over the last few, I had convinced myself that comfort and routine were enough. Yet the moment she walked through the door, I felt an invisible line shift. She was glowing, dressed in a soft silver dress that shimmered under the hallway light. Her laughter filled the room as she recounted stories about the wedding. How the groom's best man had tripped over a flower girl, how Aunt Carolyn had danced like she was 20 again, and how the champagne had flowed freely, loosening everyone's inhibitions. I nodded along, half listening, trying to match her energy, but deep down I noticed a subtle edge in her voice. There was excitement there that wasn't meant for me. A secret I couldn't quite see yet. "I can't believe you guys stayed home while I went out," she teased, leaning against the kitchen counter. It felt like I was stepping into a whole other world, just for a few hours. I laughed, masking the knot forming in my chest. I wanted to ask more, to dig into what had changed, but I kept my questions light. Something about her tone made me uneasy, though I couldn't pinpoint why. Later that evening, as she unpacked her bags in the guest room, the room that hadn't had a guest in years, I followed her with a casual question. "Did you have a good time?" She paused, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yeah, I did. More than I expected." Her eyes lingered on the mirror for a moment before she turned to me, smiling. But the smile felt rehearsed. There was a hesitation there, subtle but unmistakable. We went to bed that night like any other night. I lay awake, listening to the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the quiet rhythm of her breathing. But something had shifted. There was distance in the way she reached for the pillow, the way she kept her back to me. Normally we would talk about our days, laugh about little frustrations, or share a brief moment of intimacy before sleep took us. That night she didn't turn to me, didn't ask about my day. She just lay there, still and silent, as if the room itself had swallowed our years together. The next morning I tried to engage her, to spark some connection. "Hey, remember that dance floor mishap you were telling me about?" I asked, hoping for the smallest smile or chuckle. She looked at me briefly, her lips twitching as if holding something back, then said almost casually, "I think I needed that night more than I realized." It was freeing. The word cut deeper than she could have imagined. Freeing. I echoed, my voice calm but measured, trying not to let my heart reveal the panic that had started to rise. "Yes," she said, almost too quickly, avoiding my gaze. Everything just felt lighter. It made me think. That was when I noticed a change that had been creeping into our lives unnoticed until now. Lauren wasn't sharing her thoughts with me anymore. She was hiding them, savoring them, letting them grow in a space where I no longer belonged. The small gestures that used to mean the world, a touch, a look, a shared joke, had all but disappeared over the years. And suddenly this wedding had amplified all the distance, exposing a chasm I could no longer ignore. I tried to convince myself it was temporary, that maybe a night out had simply reminded her of what life could be like beyond our routines. But then came the messages. Late at night, when I thought she was asleep, her phone would buzz softly beside her. She said they were harmless texts from friends, but the excitement in her eyes whenever she glanced at the screen told another story. She laughed more at those messages than she did at anything I said. By the end of that week the shift was undeniable. She avoided me, made excuses to leave the house, and smiled at things I couldn't see. I tried to confront her gently, asking if everything was okay, if she wanted to talk. But each time her answers were vague, fleeting, and dismissive. "I'm fine," she would say. Or, "It's nothing. Don't worry about it." Yet in those simple phrases I heard the finality of something broken beyond repair. I spent nights walking the empty halls, feeling the weight of years of loyalty, love, and effort slowly unraveling. 10 years of marriage. In a matter of days it felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into a void I couldn't climb back from. Then one evening she sat across from me at the dinner table, her eyes distant and guarded. I asked her gently if she wanted to keep working on us, to talk about our future. She looked at me, smiled faintly, and shook her head. "I think I need to figure things out for myself," she said. Those words were soft, almost polite, but they were the dagger that finally severed the thread between us. I realized then that it wasn't about arguments, betrayal, or resentment. It was about absence, an absence of desire, intimacy, and connection. The The realization hit me with quiet, devastating clarity. Our marriage was over. And for the first time I understood that sometimes love isn't enough when one person has already walked away in their mind. The next morning I woke up early, the sunlight streaming through the blinds feeling sharper than usual. Lauren was already gone. A note on the kitchen counter simply said, "I need space. Don't follow me." No explanation, no apology, nothing. Just words that carried the weight of months, maybe years of distance and disconnection. My heart thumped in my chest, a mixture of anger, hurt, and something else I couldn't quite name, relief. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the table, staring at the note. 10 years of marriage, the home we had built together, memories I thought were unshakable, all reduced to a single sheet of paper. But beneath the hurt, clarity began to surface. I had tried. I had bent over backward to keep the connection alive, to bridge a growing gap, to show her that we still mattered to each other. And yet here I was, realizing that trying alone isn't enough when the other person has already chosen a different path. By midday I had made a decision. I called my lawyer, Michael Carter, and scheduled a consultation for the following morning. I didn't want drama, confrontation, or emotional theatrics. I just wanted certainty, structure, and a way to reclaim my life from a marriage that had quietly crumbled around me. The consultation was brief but grounding. Michael listened as I recounted the past week, the wedding, the smiles that didn't reach her eyes, the subtle signs of disinterest, and the note left on the counter. He nodded slowly, occasionally jotting notes on his leather-bound pad. "Lauren's actions show clear intent," he said finally, closing the pad. "She's emotionally checked out. You're not reacting impulsively. You're responding to reality. We'll file for divorce, request equitable distribution of assets, and address any financial concerns. You'll need to keep documenting communication, which it seems you've already begun." I left the office feeling a strange mixture of anxiety and empowerment. For the first time in weeks I felt a small spark of control in my life. Lauren may have taken herself out of our marriage emotionally, but she wouldn't dictate my future. The next few days were tense. I packed my personal belongings, sorted through years of memories, and tried not to dwell on what had been lost. Lauren returned a few evenings later, ostensibly to retrieve some items she had forgotten, but I noticed a subtle shift in her demeanor. She seemed defensive, guarded, as if expecting me to be bitter or enraged. But I wasn't. I was calm, resolute, and distant in a way that surprised both of us. "Hey," she said quietly, avoiding my eyes. "I didn't mean to leave the note like that. I just needed to think." I nodded, keeping my voice measured. "I understand, but I can't stay in a marriage where I'm the only one trying to keep it alive. I've already taken steps to move forward." She hesitated, biting her lip, her hands twisting nervously. "Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No, but I respect myself enough not to stay in a relationship that no longer works. It's not about hate, it's about reality." The following week Michael filed the divorce petition. I stayed out of unnecessary interactions, letting the legal process handle the confrontation. Each day, as Lauren and I navigated the logistics of separation, I noticed something unexpected, a sense of freedom. The heavy tension that had clung to our home for years began to dissipate. I was no longer walking on eggshells, no longer questioning every glance or text. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. Then came the most surprising part. A mutual friend, Sarah, called me a few days later. "Lauren's been asking about you," she said cautiously. "She's realizing some things." I smiled faintly, even though she couldn't see it. Whatever realizations Lauren was having weren't my responsibility anymore. I had learned the hardest lesson. You cannot force someone to love you, respect you, or stay when they've already chosen to leave. The final court date arrived 2 months later. Sitting in the courtroom, I watched Lauren walk in, looking composed yet distant, a shadow of the woman I had once known. The judge asked a few standard questions, confirmed the division of assets, and finalized the decree. In that moment I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. 10 years were ending, but I wasn't broken. I was alive, clear-headed, and ready for the next chapter. As I stepped outside the courthouse, the crisp air felt liberating. Lauren walked past, offering a brief nod. I nodded back silently, acknowledging our past without letting it define my future. I drove home, the city lights reflecting on the windshield, and for the first time in months I felt a quiet exhilaration. That night I sat alone in the living room sipping a drink, reflecting on everything. The pain had been sharp, the betrayal subtle yet profound, and the heartbreak undeniable. But through it all I realized something essential. Courage isn't just about standing up in the face of conflict. Sometimes courage is about walking away with dignity, refusing to settle for a life where you are no longer wanted. Lauren's cousin's wedding had been the trigger, a reminder of what was missing. But it was also a wake-up call. Life is too short to spend in silence, yearning for someone who no longer cares. I filed for divorce not out of anger, revenge, or spite. I filed because I finally chose to honor myself, my needs, and my worth. And as I closed the last box of memories, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. A faint, thrilling sense of hope. The past was over. The future was uncertain, but it was mine.